Hey, everybody, welcome to Experience This. This is season number 3, show number 4. And we have a budding famous author with us as our guest today. We're really looking forward to our discussion with Greg Fisher from Tripshock and WaveRes. First, I want to introduce my co-hosts, Christian Watts and Lori Timoney. Christian, say hello.
Hey guys. Yeah, I'm not sure about the budding famous author. Shouldn't he be? Maybe we'll talk about that if he's budding or not. But yeah, I'm Christian with Magpie. I missed the last one. Happy to be back.
I'm Lori Timoney with Go City, and we're really happy to have Greg Fisher with us today. Founder and CEO, I believe, right? Is that it, Greg? Okay, founder and CEO of WaveRes and Tripshock. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Greg. And we're excited to have him on, talk about his book, amongst other things. So welcome, Greg.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Hey, let's
Love the
start with
show.
that, Greg, because there's a lot of people that do know you and a lot that I think probably don't know you personally, and also WaveRes and Tripshock. That's a great combination for an entrepreneur to have both a res tech and an OTA. Tell us a little bit about how that got started, how they integrate. Is there more emphasis on one or the other, et cetera?
Yeah, so I started Tripshock about 16 years ago, so 2009. And it really was just something that happened somewhat accidentally. So I was working at a hotel, my degree's in tourism, and a family friend owns a charter business here in Destin, Florida, where I live. And I started working for them. But while I was in college, I did acquire some skills of like affiliate marketing, digital marketing. I ran a little dining guide in college that I monetized with like affiliate partnerships and Google AdSense, which is like their Google Click Share program. And I made a little money doing it. So it was something fun on the side. And then when I went to this charter business, the owner was seeing like this shift in consumers where they're, using the internet more, they're buying things online, maybe not activities, but like other things. And she asked me if I could build like a ticketing system for the charter business. And there was no company within a 100-mile radius that even had online ticketing at that time. So I had some contacts to help build this ticketing system, and we did, and it was extremely successful. And this was like, there was no mobile bookings at the time, it was only desktop. So then we had this idea, well, why don't we sell this to other operators nearby? But instead of like building this complicated ticketing platform, which was super basic at the time, it was similar to like a PayPal button. We decided to actually take the model like the travel agencies like Expedia and build an OTA, which is what it is now. So we hired a development team. We built Tripshock, and at the time it was just a handful of businesses, and it was extremely hard to get people to buy into this concept of taking online reservations for a commission. But slow but surely, every year we started to add more and more companies, and we built Tripshock up over the course of 16 years. I would say at the pinnacle was 2021. Ironically, after COVID, when things went really crazy here in Florida, we had roughly 450 suppliers that we sold for, mainly in like coastal destinations in the Southeast USA. So like Florida Panhandle, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, South Alabama, Gulf Shores, Orange Beach. So like budget family beach destinations, which I would say 90% of our product was water-based. So very exciting. We learned a lot about integrations. In 2017, we started integrating with Fair Harbor, which was like the first big step into like real-time booking. We saw like the evolution of cell phones, so they were changing the landscape. And then we started integrating with pretty much most I think to this day we integrate with 8 different reservation platforms. So we're kind of falling in the same lines of most of the global players. And we'll get probably that later in the show, but like the integration aspect was a game changer for the OTA industry. And then going to WaveRes, about 2016, we saw the res tech starting to come into play, and I wanted to get a piece of this market, but to this day, we're still bootstrapped at all of our companies. So we hired a couple developers and we started what was at the time called just RS or reservation system. We just came up with some name. We wanted to build an inventory supply side system. So we took years to develop this and took way too long. We should have, in hindsight, put more emphasis on the res tech part than the OTA. But over the course of several years, we built WaveRes. And then we decided in 2019, 2020 to rebrand it from this RS to WaveRes and focus specifically on boating. Because what I noticed happening is what all you might see is that we have the big incumbent res techs like Fair Harbor and Peak, but no one was really focusing vertically. And there's a lot of issues that boating companies and rental companies have that the big incumbents are not solving. And to be frank, when you're doing 150 to 200 verticals, you just can't do it. It's that kind of that philosophy, build for everyone, build for no one. So we decided to really hunker down and double down on the boating rental side. And that's kind of where we are at today. And I believe that if I didn't do that with WaveRes and just kept it, we probably wouldn't be here. But since we really focused in, that has been a game changer for us. And now we're seeing some pretty decent growth. And I'm excited for the future. So I'll stop there because that was a mouthful. But
just give us an idea.
Journey.
Give us an idea of scale of
Yeah.
Tripshock, how many suppliers, and WaveRes, how many suppliers?
So Tripshock has, I would say so keep in mind when we decided to rebrand Tripshock in 2023. So we were handling all sorts of things, still in coastal markets, but all sorts of things like museums and bike rentals. And we really just honed in on the boating side. So we went from about 400 suppliers to around like 275. That's kind of where we're at today. On the WaveRes side, we're hovering around like 80 to 100 accounts. We just recently had a lot of accounts for reasons I'm not going to bring up on the show, but we had a surge of new accounts recently, which has been great. So, but we do expect, a really good year actually on the WaveRes side more specifically.
So there must have been another res tech that just kicked the bucket or something. Is that?
Yeah, he doesn't want to mention Fair Harbor.
Social, yeah,
he's not going to talk about Fair Harbor at all.
You'll find out who that is. But yeah, one did kick the bucket.
So what problems are you solving for the boating industry specifically? I mean, I can imagine there's got to be some intricacies around that. What problems do you solve that other res techs can't solve?
So let's take one situation specifically. So in the state of Florida, they passed a lot of boating law legislation. One law specifically called SB 606, where they're requiring a lot of boat rental operators to create additional processes to get for liability concerns. So like there's new integrations that are needed, like with this company called VQuip that requires you need self-insurance of the renter, boaters education, which my podcast host, Kevin O'Neill, he has taken my boat test. So we're building boaters education. So that way, when someone shows up to check in, you can actually validate whether or not they are an approved boater for that rental. Waivers, our waivers cannot just be simple anymore. There's some complex requirements that get added, like attestation forms and whatnot. So this is not like just national. This is state specific things that we're going to have to be dealing with. And I don't believe that the bigger res techs are prepared to handle state by state situations where we're building features based on what we're seeing come in. And it's been a whole challenge in itself, but that's just one example of things that we're doing, things that with WaveRes that I think is going to really set us apart.
So I first heard your story, Greg, I think it was on Tourpreneur, right? I think with Shane Whaley originally. And it just kind of reminded me of my story because you over the years, you've tried a bit of everything. And I used to be the same. I had an OTA and all kinds of stuff. And I was quite inspired by the story. But today, and with both sides of the business, right? With the OTA and with the res tech, the answer to a platform is to go vertical, is to go niche. Is that
Yes.
is that a deliberate thing? I mean, that would be what the playbook would say you should be doing right now. But is that where you've got to, and you've kind of realized at this point that you need to stay vertical, and that's where you can win versus the funded OTAs or the funded ResTechs?
If we want to win, we have to go vertical. There's no other way around it. If we would have stayed the course with Tripshock, with trying to sign up everybody, we would not be in business today. So I'm able to have a very lean team on both companies where we can bootstrap. I think we can bootstrap WaveRes to several hundred clients. So because we're our focus, I don't believe that it's in the best interest of the bigger res techs to really dial into one specific vertical. I don't think it'll be easy for them to do. Because when you're building software, you got to understand how, like when you're building features, it affects other segments. And this is even to this day, like when we make a change to our software, even though it seems like a no-brainer change, we get half of the clients upset about it because it's affecting their business. So I just imagine if we had hundreds of verticals and we're making changes, then people are going to, not like the direction of the software because maybe it's going in the direction of walking tours and not museums. So I give a lot of credit to the bigger incumbents for having to manage all of these verticals and able to do it, but it requires a lot of features, a lot of development, a lot of things can potentially go wrong. So I cannot see us going any other way. And frankly, even if I had a chance to go back and build like a all-encompassing ResTech or OT, I would not do it. I like the vertical focus because, as they say, riches are on the niches, and I have an amazing community of our podcast and the Facebook group and the event. Like it's perfect. I have it all kind of set out. Now I just need to deliver and build a great product.
So I think we could spend this whole event, this whole podcast. Let's hear about Greg and WaveRes and Tripshock. It is a great story, and you've really built an interesting, verticalized company in our space, and you're highly respected. But let's talk about a few more things and what you've done to be that thought leader besides, the podcast, which is awesome for anyone who hasn't heard the Awkward Water Sports guys with Greg and his partner Kevin O'Neill. It's fun, and really I learn something every time I listen to it, as well as the Facebook group you have of the true water sports entrepreneurs that are part of your community. But let's get beyond that. Like you just published a book. It went live, I believe, on Amazon yesterday, February 10th. And it's called Mastering OTAs, the Definitive Guide for Tour Operators. Little self-serving being that you're an OTA, but that's okay. So tell us about that. Why'd you write the book? Obviously thought leadership has been, your strategy, and a good one. Tell us about why you wrote the book and, what you hope to achieve with it and what you hope people that read the book will get out of it.
So over 16 years, I've had hundreds of conversations with operators trying to help them understand how important it is to have a diversified marketing strategy and making sure OTAs are part of it, even at a small level. And it's always been a struggle. And I've also have the benefit of not being owned by a VC or PE company, that I can speak freely on a lot of these things without repercussions. So I was inspired because my podcast partner, he wrote a book, Chris Torres wrote a book, and I'm just like, and one day I actually was writing a very long guide because I was holding a seminar with some of our WaveRes clients. This big guide. I was 30 pages into this, writing about OTA and distribution and everything. And I said, you know what? I should just keep going and write an entire book. And really what it came out to is that I wanted to share my story, my experiences, what I've seen that OTAs have done, and unveil the curtain a little bit, give them a little understanding of like what OTAs think. So we see people get really upset on LinkedIn and Facebook. They complain about OTAs, but at the same time, like, why are OTAs doing this? Why are they making the decisions? So we sometimes it's not always going to be about the supplier. In fact, it's usually not going to be about the supplier. It's going to be about the customer and their investors. And if that's the case, then let's talk about how we can react or counter these moves as a supplier. So then I go into like product building. Like being 16 years into it, I've seen all the successful businesses, what they've done and how they've been able to build like a really diversified, strong strategy in OTA. So I try to explain that process of using OTAs to build your business, but also not cannibalize your direct booking. So that's a little bit about like the sky high overview of the book. And it's not a long book. It's 160 on some pages. So you can get through it in a little over an hour. And it's meant to be a book where you can relay back to it. So I go in my favorite part of the book is like building your product, the descriptions and how to build like an optimized product that sells. Like that's my favorite part because that's a lot of what I've done. But it's something you can relay back to, you can give to your team. If you hire someone new at your company and they don't know anything about OTAs, you can hand them the book and within an hour and a half, they're now at least up to speed a little bit. And there's really nothing out there like that you can do. So for tour operators, hopefully it can help them build like, stronger teams when it comes to like their marketing strategy. So that's kind of the sky high about why I was motivated to write this.
And Greg, I haven't read your book yet. I wish that I had actually before this conversation, but I will read it. Do you cover kind of the breadth of OTAs? Obviously, you talked a little bit about the fact that you're, obviously a smaller OTA. You're all about curation and vertical. And interestingly enough, the conversation we had last week with Civitatis, they obviously are curated as well, and they direct themselves toward a specific market, albeit a bigger market. Do you cover kind of the breadth of the smaller OTA as well as maybe, the big guys like Get Your Guide and Viator? And what do you think is some of the biggest, I mean, obviously it's a big question, so maybe just bring it down a little bit or sharpen it up, but the biggest difference between working with a smaller niche OTA and one that is like a Get Your Guide or a Viator, are you applying the same rules across all OTAs, or are you kind of defining some differences?
It's a good question. So if you asked me that question a year ago, I would have said the big OTAs are really big on using like algorithms and personalization and all that. But I listened to a podcast with Get Your Guide. Tao Tao, I believe, did a podcast with Tourpreneur. And now the big OTAs seem to be going back to a curated model. And I would say for small niche OTAs, they've always kind of been curated because you got to think like if you're a supplier, small OTAs especially, like they want profitable partners because they don't have the demand. They don't have a lot of real estate to give. So they want to push their, the best product in their market that with the best value. So bigger OTAs, they have more levers they can pull. They can use personalization from people signing in. They have more product supplies, so they can use algorithms and sorting and filtering options. So it was kind of surprised to see, well, not so much surprised because I figured this was going in this direction, but seeing the bigger OTAs now focusing on curation, because when you have 900 products in your market, and only 10 of them are generating 80% or 90% of your revenue, then why inundate the user with all these options when it really doesn't matter in the end? And that's, towards the end of writing the book, I had to go back and rewrite some things because it's changing. Like just in like 6 months, we're seeing this huge shift with OTAs where they're going back to curated model. They're focusing on products that are great partners that make them a lot of money. And it's one big thing that I think suppliers have to, especially smaller suppliers, I believe, have to note that, at the end of the day, like they got to make money. So
I don't think anybody's got a clue on curated versus platform, right? I don't know how many times Expedia's bounced between platform and all of them. Viator, I think, are going more platform now. Get Your Guide, I think, say go and create it, but they've got 120,000 products. I don't think that means they're going. I just don't think anybody's worked it out. Anybody has a real strategy except for the people that are curated, say curated's the best just because you don't want to keep flipping. But I don't think anybody's actually decided this is better than this.
Well, I mean,
think
I think
it
the
will flip.
strategy is what Greg's doing, right? The strategy comes from somebody who's born that way, right? Like his company, or like Civitatis is sort of, they're growing bigger, so they have to be very careful about how much product they add. But I think when you start there, then it to me it seems like that's very different from what somebody like even Expedia is doing.
Well, I mean, is Tripshock a total curated marketplace? You know, I mean, there could be 50 different companies that offer water sports in Key West. You know, a bunch of parasail companies, a bunch of jet ski companies, a bunch of boat rental companies. Are you curating that down, or are they all on the platform if they want to be?
So last year, for the first time since we started, for 15 years, we started charging for new suppliers because I wanted to lower the I would say lower the amount of what we currently have. I wanted to slow down the addition of new products because we don't necessarily have a product issue and this is most OTAs. We don't have product issue on OTAs. We have a demand issue. And so it's $500 to get on Tripshock now. You have to be real-time integrated, and that doesn't even guarantee you come on. We're looking for partners that, like, if they want to come on, then they're serious. If they're putting $500 in and paying, you know, another $100 for a listing, then they're ready to come on and actually provide a higher level of service than what most supply comes on to OTAs. And we can work with them, you know, to build a strategy that sells. Where in the past, we were just signing up everyone that wanted to be on the platform. Most of them, you know, would give us very little inventory. They didn't really want to, play. I wouldn't say play the game. That's not the right analogies, but they don't want to be a participant, you know, in the platform. And I believe Viator, Get Your Guide are seeing this unfold, is that there's so much product down there and very few really want to be like they really care. Like no one's going. I don't really see people like singing praises on Viator and Get Your Guide within social channels. It's always the opposite. But I believe like that's what OTAs want. Like they want to see who is singing their praises, that provide great experiences, great value, and provide more, you know, visibility to those partners. Because at the end of the day, like those are the ones that generate the most revenues, are going to make them sustainable. We've seen this on Tripshock, and I wasn't surprised when I started hearing mumblings of that potentially with the bigger OTAs.
Yeah, so that's a way to have curation, is make them put their money up. I think that makes a lot of sense for sure.
And I will say we've had people buy into ever since we started it. It people still want to join and pay it.
Yeah,
so
right.
and that's great. Now they're committed.
You still asking for the same level of commission?
Oh yeah, same level of commission.
So they have to pay to sign up, but then they still pay you out 20% or whatever it is.
Yep.
Christian, you're pretty silent, being the OTA guy.
No, I was just about to move because my connection's not good. Well, let's talk about the future, Greg, because you know I always have to talk about one topic. So, what's going to happen when the AI agent comes along with the OTAs?
I don't have much to say about the AI. Are we talking about from a customer's perspective, or from like from an OTA using AI to book reservations? Like, in what context?
Let's talk about the AI agent not needing any intermediaries, right? So the AI agent doesn't need Google and it doesn't need an OTA because it'll just go direct to, well, it'll shop everybody, right? So it'll go direct to the operators and find the best price, best features, best options. So anybody in the middle trying to collect 25% rent should be pushed out of the market, including Google.
Yeah. Well, I will say I haven't thought that far ahead, but I will, like, you guys might have noticed on my LinkedIn, I posted about like, what if Google becomes an OTA? And people like messaged me like gravely concerned. They thought I had some news that I was about to share. I don't know what's going, if Google ever be it, they probably will never be an OTA. But what I will say this, I do believe that Google has a lot of power in the fact that like Google My Business or Google Business Profiles, whatever it's called now, they have not really monetized that aspect of it. And I did a Google search the other day. I searched like things to do in Destin, or I forget what it was. And there was no paid ads. And all it was a curation of local businesses from Google Maps. That's all it was. There was no ads. There was nothing. And it scared me a little bit because, you know, if that's the case, then Google literally is cutting out any opportunity for me to get a customer and sending them directly to the local business, which part of me is like, well, thank God I'm in the res tech business too, because they're going to always need something to transact that booking. But it made me realize and write that post because Google could essentially be an intermediary of some kind. Maybe they're not the merchant of record. Maybe there's a different program in place, but they could, you know, solicit the user, you know, take the click and send the booking over and collect a 10% commission instead of a paid per click. So it really changed my thought process with this new curated search result of local businesses where there's no SERPs, there's no OTAs, there's no blogs that you can click on. It's literally just, here are the local businesses sorted by dolphin cruise, snorkeling, anything else. So they're probably playing around with different ideas because I searched it again a week later and I didn't see it. It was back to where it was, but makes me think like, will OTAs even be, if OTAs can't get Google, then where is the channel? Because most OTAs, 60, 70, 80% of their business is sourced through organic traffic or paid ads. So where do OTAs go?
And I
I think
think that, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Lori.
Go ahead, Bruce.
I was going to say that Google's still playing around a little bit. Like you said, you caught one test. I'm sure it's another test now, et cetera. Ever since they acquired what's now Google Flights, what was it?
Yeah,
ITA
yeah,
software. And that was in the 2010 to 2015 years, right? Ever since then, everyone said, when is Google going to become an OTA? And Google continues to say they're not. And I believe they're not. They make too much money advertising. Now, maybe AI will change their tune on that finally. Personally, I don't think so. I don't think they want to be the merchant of record and have service desk, et cetera. But let's go to the other point. And you made this point, Greg, on a LinkedIn post about how dramatic the changes are to their things to do search. So Google Things to Do is a topic we've been talking about as long as we've had this show. We talk about it at all the arrival events. Christian's often the guy who's giving his point of view on Google Things to Do. And you posted a pretty major article about dramatic changes that just happened a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
We'd love to hear your point of view about that. Then hear Lori and Christian's point of view, point counterpoint type thing, as you look at what's going on with Google Things to Do changes.
Well, there's a lot of things I have thoughts on Google's Thing to Do, but
yeah, it was about a 10-point post.
That could be a whole episode in itself. But what I will say is, we participate in Google Things to Do on Tripshock and Waveres eventually. But what we're finding is that if Google has access to all the product feeds of all the OTAs, then couldn't they not extract all the information, create a really beautiful UI UX like they did with Google Hotels? And why do we use OTAs? They can literally be the OTA. And that's back to kind of my thing about OTAs. If they have all of the data, the product feeds, and the product feeds are getting more extensive, they're getting more information out of it, then they can build the UI UX, and then you can have basically Google Hotels version 2, but with activities. Now there's one more person in the middle between us and the customer, and they're going to do it great. Everything Google does, when they really put their mind to it, they usually do good work. Maybe not all the time, but Google Reserve was kind of a mistake, but I think they've learned from it. But yeah, it's just really it's really interesting. That's my perspective. I just think this whole thing with product feeds could potentially really hurt OTAs in the future.
Well, I don't know if Google Hotels has hurt hotels, right?
Yeah.
It seems to be stable now, right? Flights, hotels, things to do is stable. They do really well from the hotel ads piece. I think they're doing quite well from the things to do piece. To me, this is where they're going to be at, and this makes sense to them. The only difference with the hotels is there's a UX behind it, right? But the model's the same. They don't collect any payments. It's all just meta search. So I feel like this is where Google ends up. I think they've realized, and this is what I say when I do workshops on them, is people are actually searching for products, not websites. So people don't care about the whatever website that has lots of things to do in Destin. They want to know this boat tour or that kayak option, or that's what they're looking for. So that's what the Google things to do is kind of based on. And I feel like they've stabilized around this, and I feel like having the products feed is what's going to work with AI, because AI is going to need the product feed. It doesn't need the search intermediary.
But at
And
the same
my
time,
last point
though,
on that,
go ahead.
sorry,
Sorry.
go on. Well, my last point on that is, and the Google would say this, is that some people do want to shop on the OTA. They trust the OTA. The OTA's got a brand. If they're given an opportunity, they'll buy it on the OTA. And some people want to buy it direct from the operator. And I think that's just a human choice. And as long as people feel that way, then Google want to offer those too. So I think there is a place for an OTA on that. The agent, I think, is the bigger problem for the OTA.
Well, the two issues that I see is, one is we get a lot of top of funnel traffic on Tripshock, and I'm sure all the other OTAs. And when I say top of funnel, things to do in whatever destination, tractions, that it is becoming much more harder to acquire. Every single year, I'm paying more and more to acquire that traffic. Literally, like, just that example that Bruce just brought up, we're being pushed. Those SERPs are being pushed further and further down. Even TripAdvisor is seeing that. So if Google creates a UI like they did with Google Hotels, when you type in things to do, they take the product feed data, pipe it in, they're not going to send that top of funnel traffic to the OTAs anymore. And that is a large bit of traffic that we currently get. It's going to be very transactional. And another point to mention, with Google Hotels, how am I going to compete as a small niche OTA? How am I going to pay, the click cost when they start charging? Because I'm pretty sure how meta search work. I haven't looked at it a long time. Maybe you guys can have some insight, but you pay per click for meta search. So now I'm going to be forced to compete and pay substantially more, through, this meta search or whatever system they have. And it's going to be hard for niche OTA. So I'm not saying that it's impossible, but the niche OTAs and the smaller ones that are limited in funding, we're going to have to branch out and find other channels. Google will be less and less profitable, which it already has been. Our acquisition costs on Google have gone up probably 50% in just the past 2 years. So we're already experimenting with other channels, which thankfully it's been working out. But I really see, like, Get Your Guide, Viator, Klook, like, they're going to rise to the top because they have the funding to go toe to toe and pay these exorbitant acquisition costs. So,
what's interesting is I spoke with an OTA this morning that is somewhat new to the OTA space, based in Europe, but doing really, really well. And one of the things that we're seeing with Google Things to Do is that the OTAs are really fighting quite a bit for the products. So, whatever best price is on the right sidebar, but then you go to their site and it's actually not necessarily reflective of the actual cost. So I wonder when Google is going to start catching up with that, because I don't necessarily think what's on the right sidebar is exactly the correct selling price that maybe the customer is going to end up with. But on top of that, this particular OTA is also very much really started in the blog space and very heavy SEO. So guides and travel guides and things of that nature. And I was asking them what they were experiencing over the last year or so with all of these changes to the Google search algorithm. And they said that because their content is so quality and because they've, that's where they started, it's actually benefited them versus other OTAs, which I've heard that their traffic has gone down significantly. They're saying that the exact opposite, that they saw an increase, they've seen an improvement in their overall numbers because their content is something they focused on and literally started that way, which I thought was interesting and actually a really good testament to the fact that you need great content if
Yeah.
you want to survive out there, especially now.
Lori,
I always tell people to do the right thing with Google. You know, they tell you what they want, and if you try and cheat and play the games, then unfortunately sometimes it works for years, and you create all this kind of junk content, top 10 of everything, and it might work for 5 years. So you think that is the right thing, and then you get dinged like a lot of companies did last year. But yeah, I think good content does rise to the top. The other thing you mentioned there, Laurie, with the listings, Google did a shakeup last week on those admissions listings. So it was always sorted by price, cheapest at the top, and they mixed it all up last week because people learned to play the game. So we'd see these 2 or 3 companies at the top that would always change their price by 1 cent each time to keep trying to get to the top. And Google doesn't like that kind of thing, so they shook it all up last week.
no,
Because everyone
it's
learns to play the Google game, and they learn the hacks and they learn the tricks, and it's not about that. It's about supporting the customer.
yeah, we did that with when Google Reserve came out. We took advantage of that temporarily, and then the suppliers got super angry that when you hit book now, it would go to an OTA. That, I mean, that actually caused us to lose good clients because they thought that we were. I mean, we just turned on thousands of products. We didn't really think twice about it, but like they got very upset that they felt like we hijacked their business. And it's like, oh well. Now going back to your point, Lori, about clicking the price, I'm going to tell you, there are so many OTAs, res techs that are in violation of Google Things to Do policy. It is a lot more than we think. So we, when I see it and I see they're in violation, I know the policies really well, and I'll submit them to Google Things to Do support. And they've been very good at removing. There's an entire OTA that they removed because they were actually like making up fake reviews, like fake review counts. They were pulling them from their feed. And also when you clicked over, the business name wasn't listed, the price wasn't listed. I mean, everything was wrong. But it just goes to show like they're a pretty small team over there. And like they told me, hey, we need you to tell us because when people make changes, we just don't know all the time. So just advice to people listening, if you see your competitor or you see an OTA that's violating, you can write a support ticket and they will investigate it and they will remove them. They've been pretty good at it so far. So, but it's pretty bad. And there's just so much going on. A lot of things are changing and they just don't have a big team. So we need to help them.
Yeah.
Listen, I haven't heard you speak to that. I hear you speak about things to do a lot. I haven't heard you talk about companies violating. Is that something that you've identified as well?
Yeah, we're the same. We find it all the time, and we'll send a ticket to Google if it's somebody doing something really bad. Yeah, it's unfortunately it's what there's always a number of companies who'll do whatever it takes, and they might submit a listing, submit a product, maybe change the price overnight. Maybe they've got sneaky pricing. It's only available at, I always say, like 4 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. It's an extreme example, but people, there's always companies stretching the limits and getting away with it.
Playing the Google game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lori, I cut you off. Sorry about that.
I was going to say, I'd love to talk a minute about a point you made, Greg. I think it might have been in the same post where you said that that Google favors Google reviews over other reviews. So in other words, if you've got like a website that's using Trustpilot reviews versus Google reviews, you're suggesting that Google, when they're, searching around, they're going to pick up content that centers on Google reviews versus other reviews. And I wondered, like, I don't know, Christian, do you have any thoughts on that? I'd like to learn a little bit more about that.
We haven't seen that as a pattern. Having reviews definitely helps 100%. We haven't seen anything where they've favored, because Google doesn't do reviews by product. So the only thing they have is company-wide reviews. So I think for that reason they respect the reviews from TripAdvisor or elsewhere. But have you seen anything on that, Greg, where you think they're favoring Google reviews?
And so we'll take there's two different things. You got TDD and then you have just regular Google. I think one of my points I was making, like I tell everyone, send reviews to Google because one, TripAdvisor is not a review site anymore. It is an OTA regarding tours and activities. So if you're building your TripAdvisor profile, you're not doing yourself any favors unless you're on Viator and you're really trying to build your Viator bookings. If someone's searching your business on Google and you have a lot of reviews and you have we have great SEO, a great product, you're active, then it's going to benefit you. You're going to get way more ROI out of it than sending them elsewhere. I used to say like, hey, send a little bit to Yelp, send some to TripAdvisor. Now, if I can only send to one, it's overwhelmingly Google because the ROI makes sense now. So regards to TDD, I feel like there's one thing that TDD has to solve. And here's a perfect example. There is a product or a company in Destin, and they have 10 products. And every single one of their listings in the product feed on Google TDD shows 5,000 reviews. They just started a kayak tour. It's brand new. 5,000 reviews. They got a charter business. They go out seasonally. 5,000 reviews. So when you're comparing that product in the feed with businesses that might just have one product where all the reviews are legitimately to that product, then it's fair. It's a good user experience. So people click that thinking that, oh man, if 5,000 people took this kayak tour, now maybe they legitimately have 3 reviews. But since Google doesn't source product reviews for the individual operator, it just puts 5,000 reviews on everything. So that's, I believe, a problem that they have to resolve. But for operators, if they lose that, then now the OTAs with their product reviews will come in and take a lot of market share. So I kind of see it on both sides where it's not necessarily a good user experience, but on the flip side, if they don't have any reviews, then it's really hard for them to build up momentum on Google things to do. So I'm kind of
go to one of those new products. Let's say it's a kayak tour, and this company just started a kayak tour, and you click on, oh, there's 5,000 reviews. So you click to check out the tour, and the review might be on the jet boat rental and a review on jet boat rental that the same operator offered. Is that what you're saying?
So if the brand, so let's say that you have a tour brand and you have, and so Google reviews, it's for the brand, not necessarily for the product.
Yeah, right.
No.
So it could easily be a different product, basically.
Yeah, the reviews could, well, if it's a new product, then the reviews are definitely for another
a different product. Yeah, that's problematic. Okay, we are pretty much out of time.
Okay.
Unless either Lori or Christian, you have anything specific, I have just a final speed round question.
Yeah.
You guys got something else you want to ask?
I've got a speed round question, but I'll make it my last question. Are we going to, in 5 years, are we going to have more OTAs or fewer OTAs?
Fewer, no doubt.
Fewer. Consolidation is coming.
I think more, because there will be more niches, plus geographies. I mean, we haven't touched a number of parts of the world.
We have to define what OTA is, right, Christian? Like what size you're talking about here. We might have more small, tiny guys, but are we going to have more that are really delivering volume? No, I don't think so.
So yeah, if you're going to ask a speed question, you got to be specific. What's the prompt?
Oh, I failed at the speed question. I thought it was a good speed question. More or fewer? I mean, you can't get it easier than that. But anyway, let's go with your speed question, Bruce, since yours is so much.
Well, let's just hear Greg's answer to the question. More or less digital distributors of Experience's product globally.
Fewer 100%, unless some magical marketing channel comes out of the woodworks that we have not. But the acquisition costs right now are so extreme. Like, well, I will say the Batch app
Yeah.
they have found a different way to acquire customers through their app and the referrals. Brilliant idea. So yeah, if there more of them are like that, but how many verticals are there going to be? Like you can't have 20 bachelorette party planning apps, but my overall answer is far fewer, because the acquisition cost at the current state of our industry are too high. So when they come down or other, cheaper sources come available, then I believe that we might see more OTAs come in the marketplace.
And we've got also the introduction of the AI agent, which 100% AI is going to impact.
Exactly. Yep.
100%.
Which I'm sure is Christian's answer, so we don't have to have Christian answer, right? Okay. Leading to the following speed question at the end. And I'm going to let you go first, Greg, since you already kind of answered it in one of your LinkedIn posts. Chat GPT operator in a year, will that be worth paying attention to? You were quoted in your LinkedIn post, Chat GPT operator is embarrassing. That was, it was your first try with it.
Well, for them to charge $200 and get us all excited over it, I was deeply disappointed. It took forever. It was sloppy. But if this is the worst it will be, then it is pretty exciting to see it work. Honestly, by the time it took to run and book it, I could have done it. I mean, it only literally takes less than a minute to book an activity. So for research though, that's great. So I don't know. I'm
all right. So
eventually we'll get
question,
there.
are you bullish or bearish on operator as of today, based on your expectation of where it will be in a year?
As of today, it's not solving anything, because booking an activity through like Tripshock, for example, takes less than a minute. So that took 5 minutes and took me more thinking. So yeah.
Okay.
Was what you said next year? Didn't you say next year?
Yeah, in a year. I mean, obviously it's going to keep getting better. So Lori, what's your perspective on
I'm
operator?
in a year bullish. In a year, people are going to be using it.
Yeah.
Okay. And Christian already told us a year ago that in a year they'll be using it, right, Christian?
No, sometimes I make predictions about things that are happening. It doesn't mean they're going to take over the market. It just means they're going to be super exciting. So now is agents are happening. This is a game changer. The fact that an operator will be available on the free or the $20 probably in the next few weeks, I think. And it's day one. And a couple of key things about operator. First, it makes every website an API. So now the AI uses our laptops in effect. So anything we can do, it can do, including using Salesforce and using other apps and the second thing to say is now it's got something to train on. So with ChatGPT, you've got this kind of pre-training it had to do on the world's data. Now it's browsing websites and solving problems. It can verify that it can solve those problems and get verification that it solved them, which sounds like a really weird, quirky thing, but that's important. It's self-training now. Yeah. And as it self-trains on the internet and it's going to see success, you've booked a tour. Now it learned how to navigate Greg's website. Next time it does that, it won't need to learn that again. So it's going to learn 100 times quicker than it has done in the past based on it browsing actual websites. So that's going to be a game changer.
Yep.
Soon.
Interesting. And a year in AI terms is like 100 years, right? Yeah. In web terms. So
I have to say the ChatGPT 4.0, I guess that's what it is, the $20 subscription. I've seen already major improvements in even that, what I ask as far as travel booking, and it's now serving me up Airbnb listings for specific neighborhoods at specific times. And that's not even operator.
Yeah.
I was pretty impressed by that the other day when I saw that.
No, have you guys tried DeepSeek? You got done DeepSeek yet?
I have not done that.
Everyone
really good.
talks how great of. I didn't think DeepSeek. I prefer ChatGPT, and I use both of them for 2 weeks. Really just digging into both of them. But I really liked ChatGPT's answers better. And I think ChatGPT is better as like a search engine than it is for as far as like booking travel like that. When I think of like disruption, I'm thinking, okay, let's first solve search. I think search is bad inherently. There's just too many options. ChatGPT has been phenomenal. I don't use Google much anymore. I use ChatGPT for everything. So my belief is like, hey, let's first figure out a better way to disrupt search, which ChatGPT is here. A lot of people are using it. The next phase is, okay, let's see how search can actually, make things more seamless to booking travel, which operator comes in. So yeah, it's going to happen eventually.
We're going to have a show, and I think it's 2 shows from now, specifically about search and how it's changing with AI. You mentioned ChatGPT is how you search. Well, Perplexity is how a lot of people search. I read that Bing now has like a 10% market share, where it was 1 or 2% because of their partnership with OpenAI. Who knows what's going to happen with OpenAI with the new ownership battle that's going on? So stay tuned. We are done for this episode. Thanks, Greg, for joining us. Not only an author, but a podcast rock star, the Awkward Waters Sports Guys. And really appreciate you joining in on our show, Experience This. And good luck on the book sales. And we will see you at the next Arrival event for sure, if not before that. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Lori and Christian.
Bruce, we wanted to give you 3 seconds to talk about the football thing.
The football thing. Eagles win. Congratulations, Eagles. And now they are going to run it back for back-to-back.
Okay.
All right. That was more than 3 seconds, but fine.
All right.
Thanks. Well done.